Yo, what is up, guys? This is the first video of the fantasy schedule. I will be doing things differently, where I'm gonna have different sign-ons from different eras, and the bumpers are gonna alternate with Check It 1.0 and 3.0, which, as you will see later in the video. That's all I have to say. Join Discord and link in the bio, and let's get on with the video.
Coming up on Cartoon Network, next,
Chowder.
coming up next,
Regular show.
on Cartoon Network. Coming up on Cartoon Network, next. Coming up on Cartoon Network, next,
Generator Rex.
coming up on Cartoon Network, next. Coming up on Cartoon Network, next. Coming up on Cartoon Network, next.
Ben 10.
Coming up on Cartoon Network, next. Coming up next
The Amazing World of Gumball.
on Cartoon Network. Coming up next
More The Amazing World of Gumball.
on Cartoon Network. Coming up next
The Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack.
on Cartoon Network. Coming up next
Teen Titans Go.
on Cartoon Network. Coming up on Cartoon Network, next.
Tom and Jerry.
Coming up next
What's New, Scooby-Doo?
on Cartoon Network. Coming up next
More What's New, Scooby-Doo?
on Cartoon Network. Coming up on Cartoon Network, next.
Johnny Test.
Coming up on Cartoon Network, next. Coming up next
Cartoon Planet.
on Cartoon Network. Coming up next
Courage the Cowardly Dog.
on Cartoon Network. Coming up on Cartoon Network, next.
Camp Lazlo.
Coming up on Cartoon Network, next.
Regular show.
Coming up next
Teen Titans Go.
on Cartoon Network. Coming up on Cartoon Network, next. Coming up next
The Amazing World of Gumball.
on Cartoon Network.
Check out what's coming up tonight on Cartoon Network.
Next. Later.
On Cartoon Network.
Coming up on Cartoon Network, next.
A new Adventure Time. Later.
A new regular show. Next. Later.
On Cartoon Network.
Next. Later.
On Cartoon Network.
Next. Later.
On Cartoon Network.
Coming up next
Clarence.
on Cartoon Network. Coming up next
The Looney Tunes Show.
on Cartoon Network. Coming up on Cartoon Network, next. Coming up next
Meg.
on Cartoon Network. Coming up on Cartoon Network, next.
The Amazing World of Gumball.
Coming up next
Ed, Ed, and Eddie.
on Cartoon Network. Coming up next
More Ed, Ed, and Eddie.
on Cartoon Network. Coming up next
Adventure Time.
on Cartoon Network. Coming up on Cartoon Network, next. Batman, the Brave and the Bold. Coming up on Cartoon Network, next. Coming up on Cartoon Network, next.
Thundercat.
Coming up next
Clarence.
on Cartoon Network.
Next.
Coming up next
Total Drama Island.
on Cartoon Network. Coming up on Cartoon Network, next,
Johnny Test.
Wow, you actually made it to the end. I appreciate you. Now, subscribe and like the video. And now listen to me sing this beautiful verse by Sir Drake talking to 21 Savage. And I'll see y'all in the next video. 21, can you do something for me? Can you hear a little rich flex for me? 21, can you do something for me? Drop some bars to my pussy eggs for me. Then 21, can you do something for me? Can you talk to the op next for me? 21, do your thing. 21, do your thing. Do your thing. 21, do your thing.